Well, hello, and thanks for joining me today. My name is Sharon Bonham. I am a certified financial planner, and I've been an instructor for Kaplan for 14 years now. I know when I first thought about becoming a certified financial planner, I had a lot of questions. You probably do too. So let's jump right in and talk about the path to becoming certified. An overview of what I'll be talking about today is the benefits to you of earning the CFP marks, the 4 E's to CFP certification, and choosing a university program for CFP certification. So let's jump in. The CFP board conducted a survey of what consumers are looking for, and 86% of investors prefer an advisor who has passed a certification exam and gone through a rigorous education program. 91% expect that advice from a financial advisor should take into account their total financial situation. In other words, comprehensive planning, where we take into account that if we make a decision in one area, we think about how it may impact some of the other goals the client may have. And lastly, 9 out of 10 consumers feel most confident working with an advisor who holds a financial designation. So we look at these 3 statistics. The CFP designation not only meets these criteria, it's also considered the gold standard for comprehensive planning. Let's turn our attention over to you and what benefit there may be to you in earning the certification. So a survey of those who hold the CFP designation found that 91% of certificants are strongly satisfied with their decision to pursue the CFP mark. On average, CFP professionals earn 26% more in compensation than non-CFP professionals. So I know that most of you aren't pursuing the designation or thinking about pursuing the designation solely for financial reasons, but this is a sacrifice of time and money, entering into a program, preparing for the CFP exam, and you want to make sure that it's worthwhile. So that statistic does back up the fact that it probably is a worthwhile endeavor and would be rewarded. Lastly, 70% of certified financial planner professionals believe the CFP mark has had a significant or considerable impact on client trust. And if you're in the financial services business, you know how important trust is to those relationships and retaining clients and so forth. I'm going to talk about the 4 E's to CFP certification, the 4 requirements that must be met in order for someone to earn the right to use the CFP marks. So let's go ahead and start off with the education requirement. Before applying for the CFP board exam, the education requirement must be met. And the education requirement for most students would be completing a CFP board registered education program like we're talking about today. Now, some students may apply for challenge candidate status. And what that means is that if you already hold another designation such as CPA or Chartered Financial Analyst, CFA, or some other designations, you may be able to challenge the exam and be allowed the ability to take it without taking a full CFP board registered education program. Instead, you would just have to take one course, the financial plan development course. If you think that you fit into that category, then you can go onto the CFP board website and get more information about that. I'll provide the website in just a minute. Even students who meet the criteria for challenge status, if they don't feel that they have sufficient knowledge to pass the CFP exam without going through a program, then they might decide to participate in a full education program. The second education requirement that the board requires is that those who use the certification must obtain a bachelor's degree or its equivalent. And you don't necessarily have to have completed your bachelor's degree at the time you enter into a CFP board registered education program. As far as the CFP board is concerned, you just need to have completed it by the time you actually apply to the CFP board for the right to use the marks. Now, each university program is different as far as their requirement. If they require you to have a bachelor's degree completed or whether it just needs to be in process or what have you. So when you speak with our designation specialists and focus on a particular university's program, they can give you more information about the requirements for that particular university's program. Let's turn our attention over to the CFP examination itself. This is a computerized exam. It's all done in one day, and it's a 6-hour exam. It's divided into 2 3-hour sessions. 3-hour session in the morning, a short break for lunch, and then you come back in the afternoon. There's a total of 170 multiple choice questions. There's no essay or anything along those lines. Sometimes students have heard that there's an essay or some kind of a presentation. The CFP exam is all multiple choice questions. And built into some of those questions is a case study scenario. So you might be given 2 or 3 pages of information about a particular client scenario, and then be asked maybe 7, 10, 12 questions about that scenario. In addition to the standalone questions and the case study questions, you'll see a number of item sets. An item set is a paragraph or 2 of information, and then maybe 3 or 4 questions about that scenario. The exam is administered 3 times a year. It's given in the months of March, July, and November. And in each of those 3 months, there's an 8-day window that a student can choose from when they sign up for the exam. The exam is given at Prometrics testing locations, right? Those are the computerized testing centers. Now, they switched to a computerized exam, about 5 years ago. Before that, when it was paper and pencil, there were less days available for you to schedule to take the exam and less locations. So this is much more convenient for our students in that they usually have a Prometric location fairly near where they live or work. Let's turn our attention over to the experience requirement. The first thing I want to let you know is that the CFP board itself regulates what qualifies as experience. And if you want more information about that, you can go to the CFP board website, which is cfp.net. In general, to meet the experience requirement, you need to show that you have worked with clients and their money for a period of 3 years or more of full-time experience. You might even be able to meet the experience requirement in as little as 2 years if your experience is doing comprehensive financial planning under the supervision of someone who holds the CFP designation. So students sometimes say, well, my experience is a little off the beaten track. I don't know if it counts or not. You really would need to go to the CFP board. As a matter of fact, I believe that for a fee, you can apply to have them review your experience requirement before you actually enter into an education program or take the CFP exam. Sometimes students think that, well, it doesn't make any sense for me to bother to take the classes until I have this experience requirement out of the way. That's not necessarily the case. I myself was a career changer, so I took the classes, I passed the CFP exam, and then I actually made the switch into the financial services industry. And sure, I had to wait for 3 years of working in financial services before I could use the designation, but at least I got the education and the exam out of the way when my schedule allowed me to have the time to do that. I was glad that I did it that way, actually, because I found that when I entered into the field, I wanted to put a significant amount of time actually learning the practical work experience, and I was sort of glad that I didn't have the education classes occurring at that same time. And lastly, the ethics requirement. In order for you to use the CFP marks, in addition to those 3 other requirements, you must agree to adhere to the CFP Board's Code of Ethics and Professional Responsibility and the Financial Planning Practice Standards. So the CFP Board has a number of principles they expect CFP certificates to uphold, and they have some rules that are a little bit more specific as to how they are to uphold those standards. They also require you to sign a fitness standards for candidates and registrants application, and to agree to and pay for a background check. If you want information on any of these things that are listed here, you can get those from the CFP board website. Again, that's cfp.net. Now let me talk more specifically about the university partnered programs. So there's really two options as far as formats for the curriculum. You can take in-person classes, or you can take online classes. And there's a number of universities throughout the U.S. that have partnered up with Kaplan, so that the program is actually a partnership between Kaplan and that particular university. The instructors that will be teaching you are trained and credentialed instructors. They usually have very extensive financial planning background. Most of them have the CFP designation. Sometimes we use instructors who have an alternate designation or qualification that may be appropriate for a particular course. For example, an estate planning attorney usually does a fantastic job teaching the estate planning course, as you can imagine. Let me talk to you briefly about the courses and what's covered. In the first course, General Financial Planning Principles, Professional Conduct and Regulation, we talk about the financial planning process. We also talk about the CFP Board Principles and Rules for comprehensive financial planning. And we talk about things such as economic factors. We talk about education funding, because that's typically the second largest goal for many clients. The second course is risk management, insurance, and employee benefits. So we talk about the risks that a client may face and whether it makes sense for those risks to be covered through insurance, and if so, what's the amount of coverage, what policy provisions we need, and so forth. The investment planning course, if you already have a securities license, you may find some of the course overlaps with that investment foundation that you already have. In the first half of the course, we talk about financial instruments and their characteristics. In the second part of the course, we talk about portfolio management and the tools that are used to assemble a portfolio that's shall we say, a smart or efficient portfolio, meaning the best potential return for the level of risk that's appropriate for a client. So those of you who are not already in the financial services industry, don't worry, we do teach that course from the ground up, so there's no need for you to actually have a securities license for you to be successful in that course. The next course is the tax planning course. I would say this is the one that is the best at building a student's confidence in financial planning. And the reason I say that is if you're not in the financial services industry, you probably, unless you're an accountant, you probably don't have a lot of tax knowledge. Even if you're practicing in our industry, many times your compliance department may say that you're not allowed to give tax advice. But let's face it, clients expect you to know about taxes even if you're not giving advice. And the example that I typically use with potential students is from my own experience. Years ago, I worked with a money manager and a CPA, and we had a new client coming in for their initial meeting. And he arrived early. My colleagues were not yet in the office. And so we were chatting for a while, and he was telling me how delighted he was to be maximizing his Section 179 expense for the year. So having been through a CFP certification program and having eventually taught the tax course, I was aware of what that expense, what that deduction meant. And I wasn't going to be a CPA, so I didn't need to give him advice on it. But let's face it, isn't it nice to know about something that your client expects you to know about? If I didn't know about it, I'd be probably a little bit nervous, maybe not making eye contact, changing the subject, hopefully not pretending I know about it, and all kinds of behaviors that don't tend to enhance that client relationship and build trust. So personally, I'm a big fan of the tax course. The next course is retirement savings and income planning. So we've got two different perspectives in this course. In the first part of the course, we talk about the employer-sponsored retirement plans and the characteristics that each of them have. And in the second part of the course, we really talk about things from the point of view of the consumer, meaning contribution limits, required distributions, exceptions to the 10% penalty on early distributions, and things like that. But the reason we also focus on plan design is your client may be a small business owner, and perhaps there's some benefit in having your client adopt a retirement plan. So having the knowledge of how one type of plan differs from another is very important to being able to give a solid recommendation. The next course is estate planning, and I think that's a fantastic course. You may have some estate planning knowledge, but typically that tends to be an area that's a little weak unless you're an attorney. So the class is wonderful in being able to help you understand why clients may set up accounts as being owned by, for example, a irrevocable life insurance trust or a revocable living trust. So those things are explained as far as what purpose does the trust serve. And the final course is the financial plan development course. In this course, you take all of the knowledge that you've learned throughout the program and you apply it to a case study scenario. And the value of this course that I've heard from students, this is the feedback I get, is that this course is tremendous in helping students understand their own personal strengths and weaknesses. So you've gone through that whole program and you've got knowledge of all of these things, but what things are easy for you to recall, and which of these things are things that you need to go back and look at a little harder. So this is a great course for a student to go through just before they start to focus on the review process and preparing for the CFP exam. So you've got two choices there. You've got the live program and you have the online program. So let me tell you a little bit about the structure of the live program. Most universities have programs that start each September. Every school is a little different, but some have January starts and also April starts. The programs are typically either a 9 or 12-month program. The 9-month program typically meets every other weekend, Friday night, and then all day Saturday. And then the next weekend, there's no class. For the 12-month program, you usually have a weeknight class and then an occasional Saturday, maybe one Saturday a month. And the classes, as you might expect, are held on site at each university's location. And we already talked about the credentials of the instructors. So let me tell you about the materials that will accompany the instruction. Core lecture videos are short videos that have been recorded by the same content team that actually writes your textbooks. They are on subjects that maybe students find hard to understand, so having that second pass, in addition to the live instruction, sometimes students find that helpful. In the university programs, you usually receive a hard copy textbook, or a real textbook. You might also have the option of getting an ebook. If you have a commute on a train or something that way, you might find that pretty convenient to actually have your textbooks in the electronic version. Also, a question bank and performance tracker. So the question bank is a pretty handy tool. You can order up questions in each course that are a particular topic that you might be studying. And you can design the question pool so that you get immediate feedback on whether the answer you selected was right, and also an explanation of why the correct answer is correct. Lastly, we have an instructor link function that's on the website, and if you have a question about something that's in a textbook, maybe a calculation, you can hit the instructor link icon and you can send in your question. You'll get response from the team that wrote that particular material. Now, the online program is more self-paced. You don't have to wait for a September, January, April start to begin. And you can complete the courses at your own pace. You have up to 90 days of access per each course. But it does give you more flexibility. Maybe you know that you would be out of the country for a month and not be able to do any coursework during that time, so you need that break. this gives you more flexibility. The courses are recorded by instructors who also teach these courses in a live setting, so they know what questions students usually have about the content, and they'll discuss that during the recorded instruction. So the materials that accompany the online program are, again, the core lecture videos, the question bank, instructor link. You also get a study planner that tells you what activities to take care of each week and in what order. So it helps you keep on track. And then also, ebook is the standard format for the textbooks with the online program. If you also prefer to get a hard copy book, then you could get that for an additional fee, which isn't very high. Okay, so we talked about the education programs, and we talked about the different formats, either a live program or an online program. Now we're going to talk about a review course. One of the questions that students sometimes have is, if I went through a whole program and I learned all the material, why would I want to take a review course? Well, we're turning our attention over from knowledge and how it might apply to clients. In a review course, we're thinking about how that knowledge might be used to answer test questions correctly. So in the review course, your instructor will talk about things that are highly tested, how they tend to be tested, things to look out for, and questions about that particular topic, the acronyms, all of those things that are going to help you answer test questions correctly. The format for the live review class is it's 4 days, daytime instruction. It's offered in most major cities, many major cities. And you have the online tools and support that I will talk about in just a minute. The online tools and support are available to you whether you take the 4-day live review or whether you take the online review course. So the live review I've just talked about, and that's on the left side of the screen. On the right side of the page is the online review course. Again, it's instructor-led. Both are led by very experienced instructors who have been teaching the courses for a number of years and are well-versed. And in this review course, that's the online version, it's 11 3-hour sessions. You can attend the course live. These are in the early evening, or if you're not able to catch a particular session live, then it's usually available for you to review the next day. So it does give you some flexibility there. I'll talk a little bit about the online tools and support now. So there's a specific set of books that are available for the review course. And the books are accompanied by a study planner that's online. The idea behind the study planner is Kaplan has worked for many, many years with many thousands of review students. And over the years, they've come to see how important it is for students to have a particular format to their study time. If you just study really without any kind of structure, then it's human nature that you would tend to spend too much time on the stuff that you already understand and too little or no time on the things that you find most difficult. So the study planner is going to keep you on track. Just as we have an individual question bank for each of the individual education courses, we have an extensive question bank in the review course. It's different types of questions than you saw in the individual courses, because now that you're all done with the individual courses, you can take more comprehensive questions similar to you would see in the board exam. For example, if you're in the insurance course, we're going to ask you a question about insurance, but you haven't had the tax course yet, so we can ask you a question that involves not only insurance concepts, but also tax rules. And now that you've finished all the courses, you're ready for that type of question. And so the question bank is very extensive, and it has those types of questions available to you to help you get prepared for the CFP exam. It also has a performance tracker, so you can make sure you're staying on track. Online testing, let me clarify that for you. The review course is not a course that you have to pass. There's no test that counts towards your score. It's just helping you prepare for the CFP exam. But there are a number of tests that you can take to assess your own performance, okay, as you go through this 10-week review course. Now, you might be a little surprised, 10-week review course, I thought you said the review was either 4 days or it was 11 sessions. Absolutely, but remember that you'll be studying and preparing each week in addition to taking your live or online instruction. So that's the 10 weeks that I'm referring to. You also will have instructor email access, special videos that have been prepared talking about topics such as good study habits and test-taking practices and things like that. Pass protection I'm going to talk about in just a minute, but let's finish up by talking about the mock exam. When you follow the study planner, you'll see about 3 weeks out from the board exam, the mock exam is scheduled for you. And that is an exam that's going to replicate the amount of content, amount of questions that you would see on the CFP exam. So it's another assessment tool for you. So we already talked a little bit about our faculty there in the middle of the page, the expert faculty. We're very proud of our faculty. But let me also talk a little bit about our program. So Kaplan has been participating in CFP education and review courses for quite a few years. We've seen many thousands of students go through the process successfully. And so we're very proud of our curriculum. We also are proud of the fact that we have case studies built into all of the courses. So we want you to think not only about these concepts that you're learning theoretically, we want to think about how they might apply to real situations. So we've incorporated case studies into the education program. Let me talk lastly on this slide about pass protection. What that means is that if you attend a review class, whether that's live instruction, the 4-day, or the online class, and you're not successful on the CFP exam, then what you would need to do is contact Kaplan with your score on the CFP exam, meaning the score report is going to tell you if you've passed or failed. I don't want to mislead you and let you think that you actually get a numeric score. But if you're not successful on the CFP exam, you would submit that report to Kaplan, and as a result, you would receive one subsequent review free of charge. And that would be over the 3 cycles that follow the initial cycle in which you took the exam. So if you took it in November and you weren't successful, you could either take the review course in March, July, or the following November without a charge for the course. Now let me turn my attention over to you. We're pretty far along into the process of explaining the university partnered program, so you may get to the point where you're thinking, well, I've got all this information, is it right for me? What is involved? So this is what we expect from you, because this is what it will take for you to be successful in the program. We expect you to attend the live classes or view all of the online classes. Now, if you're looking at a 9 or 12-month program, there may be a particular session or weekend when you're not able to participate. You would want to speak with the designation specialist to find out a little bit more about that, and if there could be, if you could possibly work around that. So don't think just because you're going to miss one class that you're not eligible to take the entire 9-month program or the 12-month program. So they'll work with you as far as that goes. Complete all the assigned readings prior to class. That's really critical. Think about if you've ever gone into a meeting where you were supposed to read something ahead of time, you didn't get the opportunity, but others did. Your observation is usually that they're following along with the presentation at a different level because they already come in with that base knowledge. It's the same with our classes. You'll get more out of the live instruction if you do the assigned readings ahead of time and then use your classroom time for more talking about how these concepts would apply to clients and various situations. Participation is really critical. Now, obviously, if you're taking an online class, we're talking about paying attention and not multitasking while the online class is being viewed. If we're talking about a classroom experience, we're talking about asking questions, volunteering examples or observations during the class time. And having taught in various university programs over the years, one of the most satisfying experiences is if I teach fundamentals and I come back for the final course, just seeing the growth of the students as far as their knowledge and the bonds that they've formed with each other. It's really fantastic. And the last point is, as you might imagine, as an instructor, I'm going to tell you to study. And the guideline is 1 to 2 hours for every 1 hour of class time. Students ask me, what about that range, 1 to 2 hours? Which is it? Well, in a course where you already have some knowledge, either because you work with this particular area each day, or maybe you just find that topic easier for you to understand, you might be on the lower range, end of that range, and 2 hours might be more typical if you get to, say, the tax course, maybe portions of the retirement course. So, you know, it's really, part of it's just an individual and just are they a quick studier or they like to slow down and really chew things over. And lastly, let me put up the slide so you have the contact information for our designation specialist. So you can either contact them by calling 866-963-8329 or emailing them at cfpexamprep@kaplan.com. And they can tell you about the university programs that might be in your region. They can also talk to you about the online option. And with that, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. I can tell you that personally, earning the CFP designation was a very smart career decision for me. And I hope that we'll see you in a program down the road. Thanks very much. Bye.